Hi friends, it's Carly and I'm back again with another review. So as you guys know, I have been a little bit busy with things in my life that have kept me from making videos as regularly as I normally do. So with all of that in mind, whenever I decided to make this video today, I had time to do it. I wanted it to be as good as possible and as interesting as possible so that you guys don't feel like you're missing out, even though I'm not doing videos quite as frequently as I was when I was less busy. So I had several to choose from. I opened a couple and I ultimately decided to go with this one because there are a few different ways that I can talk about it. So obviously we'll do our regular review. We'll look at points of articulation, design, all of those fun things. But a second thing that we can talk about is a question that's been posed to me a couple of times. One in a really genuine, earnest way, and one in a not so nice way. But I think that the question is really fair, and I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting point about my collection. So we're gonna look at the figure, we're gonna talk about this particular question, and because this is a figure that I really, really like and tend to collect a lot of, we've got a couple of other past figures to compare it to, which is always fun, I think. So we can sort of talk about the evolution, the value, where this figure is going, and how we feel about it overall on its own and in comparison to others. So with all of that said, I thank you guys so much for being here, even though my videos are coming now every 4 to 5 days instead of every other day. We will get back to it on a shorter schedule soon, but y'all being here, having your notifications turned on, liking, disliking, commenting, encouraging me really means so much. Thank you very much for being here. And with all of that said, if you guys keep watching all my videos, I will keep making them. Let's get into it and take a look at War Machine. So we have looked at, I'm not even sure if I've actually reviewed a War Machine in the past because they are figures that I just naturally gravitate towards. I'm not 100% sure that the last War Machine figure that I got, which was the Iron Patriot, if I was really necessarily doing reviews then. Maybe I was. I'll have to look back. If I did do a review of the Iron Patriot, I will link it in this video here. We'll talk about him. But as I started to get more into Marvel Legends, which was really new for me when I started doing toy reviews on this channel, War Machine figures just became my automatic favorite. As you guys know, I've talked about this in the past, or maybe you don't, I'm telling you now. With my Star Wars figures, I've always really gravitated towards droids and stormtroopers. Armored figures, robot figures, those are always just the most attractive to me. And the main reason for that is because, you know, Star Wars really started me out in toy collecting, and with all of the characters up until this most recent version of the Black Series, I'm looking at my figures on the wall over here, up until the most recent version, the faces were a little bit potato-y to me. Now that they're doing a much more high-def, high-quality sort of 3D printed version of the faces, the improvement is really great, although I do know that the recent release from The Mandalorian is not getting the best reviews. You know we're all still gonna buy it, but what I always know is that the droid figures and the stormtrooper figures will always be incredible. So when I started getting into Marvel Legends and I got my first ever War Machine figure, which was from Endgame, we'll take a look at him in a second, I knew that this was like my wheelhouse for these characters. So, or for these figures, that I was gonna love War Machine, and that would be something that I would seek and probably look for War Machine figures in other brands too, which I have. My collection will expand. But I was really, really excited to get this deluxe version of this particular figure because the last figure that I had gotten that was a War Machine figure was the Iron Patriot. So when I got him, I have to say I was a little surprised. We're going to talk about everything to do with him, but let's take a look, you know, sort of as we go. I was a little bit surprised at kind of how minimal, we'll say, that he was. Not that this isn't necessarily a good looking figure. I do think that he is in a lot of ways, but for a figure that is going for $31.99 retail and billing itself as a deluxe figure, for me, deluxe should mean a little bit more than the accessories pack. And we can take a quick look at the accessories pack that comes with this figure. So he comes with the ground blast effects that we saw with our Iron Man 2020 and the sort of foot blasts that sit in those. I really appreciate this accessory as a stand, but of course we know that that is repurposed. I'm just going to keep some of these in the package just to keep everything together, but we'll look at the rest of the repurposed blast accessories that come. I am very appreciative of the Rhodey head. I don't have another War Machine with a Rhodey head, and this is a comic one, which I really appreciate. I would love to see an MCU version with the Don Cheadle head, but this is really nice. So this is a first for me, and I will be using this because I don't have another alternate head for any of my War Machine figures. But then the blast accessories that we're getting are very standard, very typical for an Iron Man slash War Machine type figure. I'm pretty sure these smoke and blast accessories we also saw on Black Widow recently. While I appreciate the paintwork and, you know, the molding that we're using a variety of colors, that they're putting like smoke in there on the stand in particular, we didn't have that with Iron Man 2020, so it is a little bit more realistic. But while there are many accessories, they are repurposing. There's nothing new, nothing that we haven't seen before. And for a figure that in every other way is so basic, it really sort of bothers me. The price point bothers me on this. $31.99 was simply too much. And before I get into going over him in more depth, we will look at the other figures that I have recently purchased. So the Endgame Iron Man here was $27.99. So here we have $31.99 and $27.99. This also came with two guns that go into little clips back here. I was in my accessories drawer and couldn't find them, but I think you guys get the idea. So he did come with a couple of accessories. And then this is sort of shocking to me, but Iron Patriot, which is probably my favorite, was $21.99. So $10 less than this figure. He did not come with additional accessories, but we can see that he is pretty extensively detailed. So from what I expected at the price point, I was really disappointed. A bunch of repurposed accessories, and essentially this whole package is the same as the package that came with the Target exclusive Black Widow. There really is no difference in the blast accessories or the packaging. So right off the bat, I was a little bit disappointed. The body of this figure is the same body and suit from Iron Man 2020. So he is actually molded in the silver plastic. So that is nice. I appreciate that because we don't have any issues with paintwork. But it is a pretty generous repurposing of that body mold for for a War Machine for me. I do like the rubbery plastic overlay of his suit, gloves, his weapons, and his mask. So, you know, I'm being hard on this figure, and that's just because War Machines are my favorite figures to collect, but I do really think that a lot more could and should have been done with this figure. I love the Iron Man style mask, the War Machine mask here, where it's like the actual face. I love this mask, and we saw that on Iron Man 2020. I think I have a couple of other Iron Man figures with that mask. But what I've been really used to seeing with War Machine figures that I haven't even been able to find with my Iron Man figures to date. As you guys recall, I've been looking for my ideal Iron Man, and Iron Man 2020 really was where I settled. But I've never found a great armored version of Iron Man, which is super disappointing coming out of Hasbro. I've just not been happy, and I've even explored other brands and still never found one that at this price point that I was happy with. So, War Machine, though, has always been like heavily armored. He's always really sort of looked the way that I would want my Iron Man to look, which is probably why I've been so drawn to War Machine overall. And this figure does not deliver that for me in any way, shape, or form. As a comic version of the character, I can appreciate it. As a person, now this is getting to that question. As a person who is drawn to War Machine toys, but not necessarily the character of Rhodesy and War Machine himself, this does not satisfy for me. As a toy, that I typically really enjoy and am drawn to because of the design of the toy and not because of any particular affinity for the character. This is just overall really disappointing. So we have, you know, his weapons built into his suit here that are flexible, which is great. We do have rubberized versions of his shoulder pads, so we're getting, you know, a pretty decent range of motion here. You know, I'm kind of glazing over this because I want to talk about so many things in this video, but as far as articulate points go, I mean, it's a very typical Marvel Legends figure. There's nothing fantastic about it. There's nothing wrong with it necessarily. There are things that could be better, like a bow forward, but there are things that work great. Thinking of rubberizing the shoulder pads in order to get us the lift that we need to see laterally in the shoulders was great. I appreciate that. We have a functional turning waist that is great. We have turning thighs. We do not have a boot turn on this, but we have, you know, knees that bend without obstruction from the calves too much. We have great movement in the feet. I have a little bit of trouble using the foot blast accessory to stand this figure up because of his top heavy, you know, nature, because he's just naturally heavier up here, but I am able to get him to stand. He can stand on his own. He works just fine. But, so the question that I've been asked is, why do I buy figures for characters that I don't really know about? And that has been asked to me as, you know, a genuine question where someone felt that I was being a little bit disingenuous by talking about an action figure that I wasn't that interested in and that I had learned about. You know, I expressed that I had learned about the character for the video. And then I had somebody, you know, I've had someone who straight up just called me a fake collector for that. So I want to talk about that with War Machine in particular, because I am drawn to this toy, though not this character. And I think that that's completely fair. I don't think that knowing about the character prevents me necessarily from assessing the quality of the toy, particularly in comparison to other toys from the same line. Being able to look at the points of articulation, the design work, the size, the price point, the value, how I feel about having it on my shelf for the price. I don't think there's anything that precludes me doing that, even though I don't particularly love this character or know a lot about him. As far as addressing the idea of me buying a figure to talk about that I know that my audience is interested in, that I don't necessarily know a lot about, I think that over time, as I've gotten more viewers, I'm interested in talking about what you guys want to hear about. So that's part of why I do that. The other part is that I am drawn to these stories. I do love comic books. I love comic book characters, and I love to learn about them. So sometimes, often actually, there have been many characters that I didn't know about. I picked up the toy because you guys wanted to see it, or I just liked the way that it looked, and it drew me into a character that I didn't know before. So that's the answer to that question that I've been asked, and it really applies to my War Machine here. So of course I knew who he was, but I didn't really ever care to know a lot about him. But I never miss an opportunity to buy a War Machine figure, and this one in particular is the first time I have actually been really disappointed. He is very basic, which sometimes works. Sometimes clean and simple is best, but up next to my Iron Patriot, which cost $10 less, granted, we looked at the accessories pack, so there are a lot more accessories packs, or accessories with this figure, although they are repurposed. There's nothing new or unique or special in that accessories pack. I mean, it doesn't add up. This figure, to me, isn't a great addition to my War Machine collection, and I just really was excited to have this and expecting more, at least something like this Endgame War Machine, but I didn't get it this time. So everything about the articulate points, if you're into this figure, are great. He does what we've come to expect from these Marvel Legends figures. There's nothing spectacular, there's nothing particularly wrong, but for me, this is just disappointing overall. I'm really sad that I feel that way, but knowing that, you know, these are some of my favorite figures to collect and figures that I'm interested in, like getting Hot Toys versions of, and that I'm looking, you know, to have like an entire shelf of War Machine figures, and that these are my favorites, to then expect this to sit next to those figures at a higher price point is almost insulting. And I just don't think that he fits. He just doesn't fit in that part of my collection. So, unfortunately, I can't give the highest marks to this particular figure. And part of that is because of my expectation and my personal love for these toys overall. As a standalone figure, if I didn't know anything about it, if I didn't collect War Machine figures, I'd probably be okay with him. I'd say that he was all right. And if most War Machine figures were like most Iron Man figures, he might be one of my top ones, because definitely the mold that was used to create him, which I believe is the Iron Man 2020 mold, is one of my favorite Iron Man figures just for character, overall appearance, the fact that they actually got a metallic out of the body by using a, you know, a shiny metallic molded plastic rather than using crappy paint. So he might be my favorite if that were the case. The case being what it is, that I really love War Machine figures and I really wanted this to be an awesome addition to my collection. I'm just not with it on this guy. And that's the sad truth. But I hope that clears up some of the questions that people have had about my collection, about why I purchase certain toys, and about how I approach reviewing toys for characters that I don't really know a lot about. So let me know what you guys think about the Deluxe War Machine here. He was $31.99. Again, we've got Iron Patriot for $21.99 with no accessories, and we've got Endgame War Machine for $27.99 with just a couple of gun accessories. I'm really interested to know what you guys think. The best part about this Iron Man for me is the Rhodey head, which I do not have for my other War Machine figures. So I'm very, very excited to have an alternate head, and I'm going to make use of that. Although the head on this figure isn't the main problem for me, it's just his lack of armored look, which is something that I really look forward to. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think about my collection, about me talking about figures for the characters of which I'm not super familiar. If that bugs you, if you like that I'm trying to learn, if you think that I do a good enough job to even bother, let me know what you guys think about the quality and the value of this figure next to those other two War Machine figures that I showed you. I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about, because I'm wondering if there's someone out there who is really super satisfied with all of their War Machine collection, including this figure, and I'm just missing something that I didn't know. Thank you guys so much for being here and watching this video. I am going to really try to get another one out in the next couple of days. I've still got great figures coming up, so however long it takes, know that I've got toys on hand and I've got fun things to talk about, and we'll get them out there no matter what it takes, no matter how long. Thank you guys for being here, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion of my War Machine figure. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will be back soon with another one. Bye, friends!